Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our online webinar, Brute Force Disruptions or Building Up Another Bubble. My name is Sarah Haffenden, and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at UKZN Extended Learning, also known as UEL. In case you are unfamiliar with UEL, we are the continuing education unit of the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and we offer all of the short courses on behalf of the university. So this webinar is in celebration of World Creativity and Innovation Week, which takes place annually between the 15th and the 21st of April, and World Creativity and Innovation Day, which takes place tomorrow on the 21st of April. Please note that we will answer all questions at the end of the presentation, so please would you post all comments and questions in the Q&A box, and if you have any technical issues, could you please post these in the chat box. We'll also allow for live questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question you would like to ask live, just raise your hand and we will open up your mic. So I'd now like to introduce you to our guest speaker for today, Professor Stefan Husik. Professor Stefan Husik is the holder of the Chair for Innovation Research and Technology Management at the Chemnitz University of Technology based in Germany. In addition to these, Professor Husik the Fraunhofer Institute. He holds a habilitation in business administration, a PhD in innovation management, and a diploma in business administration from the University of Regensburg. So welcome, Professor Husik, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for the nice introduction. Welcome, everybody. I hope you can hear and see me now. And I hope I get this technology running here smoothly. Yeah, what I want to present today is a few things about why technological innovation might be useful and what are some issues with all that phenomena we saw in the last couple of years, and what we maybe can learn or should learn for the education at especially business schools and universities. I will have some comments on that because I heard the focus is on education for this time. Yeah, so let's start. Yeah, we want to celebrate innovation and creativity. So first, maybe we ask ourselves, why is that important? Why is creativity important? Why is innovation important? And why should we celebrate that? Well, creativity is important because we need it for innovation, I would say. And yeah, creativity is involved in all parts of the innovation process. I just picked one of the more recent models for innovation, and what you can see here is that yeah, creativity is involved, of course, in all stages, but especially here in the front end, how we call that. And yeah, we need to have some good ideas to start some innovative businesses or other sort of innovative activities. And the part of creativity I will focus on today is maybe we need to find important problems to solve. And because, you know, we need the ideas to solve problems and develop good business models out of it. That will be also part of my presentation. And to do all this, we should understand the problem. So that needs maybe some efforts into the inside before we can really come up with a proper solution. So that's basically the idea. And yeah, what all that brings us in the end, hopefully, is technological innovation. So that will be the main focus here. So the next question would be, why is that important? Why do we need new technological innovation and new technologies brought to be into life? And what all that has to do with chicken. So yeah, so what all that has to do with chicken. So yeah, what does it mean for your life? So that's some ideas to bring this high level stuff more down to earth, and we should think about why it is really important for people's lives to have innovation and to have technological innovation. And here's just an example I like to bring also my lectures, is basically that over the long run, what we see here from 1900 to 2000, we basically see how the hours of work to buy a specific type of chicken in the United States basically decreased all the time. So that means the worker gets the same chicken for less and less work he had to invest, to get the chicken on the table. So you can interpret this in two ways. First, he just makes more money, or the chicken gets cheaper, right? So maybe it's both. So one of the basic assumptions here is that technological innovation and innovation per se has something to do with wages and costs, and if costs go down, it has something to do with cost-saving innovations. Maybe it has something to do with productivity. So, and that's basically, the same idea here on that slide. What you see is that, technological innovation has something to do with the long-run development of the economy, and what you see here is especially the change in sectoral development. And what does this has to do with the chicken? Well, the chicken is produced in the agricultural sector, and like 200 years ago, agricultural, was a dominant mode of economic activity. So one of the reasons why the worker has, to spend less time on working for chicken is that also the productivity in the agricultural sector has increased a lot. So not more than 80% have to work and be a farmer to bring chicken to the table for other people, for themselves. They had the privilege, to do something else with their time. For example, being on a webinar and gain more knowledge. So some people say we are in a knowledge economy, right? Knowledge, and this is manufacturing, and this is services. So the economy has changed, and that might have something to do with technological progress. So yeah, and you see this is American figures, so US labor force and where they work. And what's typical for the US economy is that also services, oops, I'm not a good painter, you see, are becoming more important. We will go back to this aspect. So what did we learn? We learned that technology and technological innovation improves productivity, and we have that stuff here still left. It's not good. And this is increasing our well-being if nothing goes wrong. So that means productivity improves prosperity. And, the economists like to say ceteris paribus, if nothing else happens. So another more generalized statistics for the same argument you see here, comparison how many working hours you needed to perform to buy certain goods over time. And also here, don't get distracted, by the real values because of the numbers and the money. Because, money, you have inflation, all this stuff. But in the end of the day, you can see there was a significant improvement also in prosperity. So, yeah, there's some discussion in the more recent years that sort of productivity-prosperity relationship is somewhat not working in the same way. Those numbers I presented just a couple of seconds ago would be unchanged and not disputed. You see the problem that maybe since the late 70s, if not already earlier, this relationship between productivity compensation and average wages has somehow changed. And that's especially interesting for those who don't make that much money, what you see here. Yeah? So while the people at the top of the income pyramid, they still profit from that productivity gains. It's not that it really trickles down to the bottom to everyone. So after the Second World War, that was pretty much the case for everyone, but now it seems to have changed quite a bit. And so some call that the great decoupling between the productivity development and the median family income, private employment, and so on. So maybe it also has some sort of effect on the employment. Not only on the income, also on the employment, maybe there's also a strong connection to that. That's at least the argument brought forward by Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee, and they basically explain that, or one of their ways to explain that, has something to do with the type of technological progress, especially digital technology. So digitalization might produce some sort of digital technological unemployment. So we see not only productivity gains, but also the new technologies maybe produce some sort of underemployment because people are not finding other jobs where they can, be useful. Well, that's a quite sophisticated discussions. Other people would also argue that there has been a lot of outsourcing and globalization, all that kind of phenomena, but some of them might be also related actually to digitalization, because you can more easily outsource stuff if you have improved communication capabilities. But maybe we have also other phenomena in place. And so we had a look before at the role of services. Maybe services don't pay that well to at least lower tiers of the society. And so the sectoral change is somewhat on the cost of manufacturing. That's basically what you see here. So if you look at the Fortune 500, how this has changed, many people would say, yeah, that is typical. It has changed a lot because of what Schumpeter once called creative destruction. Oh my God. And there's an argument by Jeffrey Funk who says it's maybe more just destruction, because the manufacturing basis of United States has somewhat, left the country in some parts, and at least in this Fortune 500 ranking, the role of manufacturing has certainly decreased. This is what you see in the comparison here in 1955 and 2020. And at the same time, you have a lot more retail, healthcare, finance, and insurance companies, which are not necessarily innovative, but just big old companies that replace the manufacturing firms. And so if you really look into the innovation dynamics, you primarily see new information and communication technology companies. So what is, digitalization all about? So it's somewhat, you see two parallel phenomena. One hand, more services, on the other hand, more digitalization. So, and this is maybe surprising because we invest more and more in R&D. So this is what this chart is all about. You see from 2000 to 2018, especially in the United States and China, China as being the new technological superpower. You see the dynamics of investing in R&D. So you would expect that a lot of innovation dynamic would be created out of that massive investment. But what we see in some statistics is that the GDP grows and the productivity is more or less declining in the long run. So at least since the 70s, and remember mid 70s or early 70s, that's where the rules of the games seem to change. So that's also interesting. So what is going on here? We invest more and seem to get less back. So that's sort of counterintuitive, I would guess. Or we could interpret it as, there's diminishing returns from innovation. So it's just about research productivity is going down. But on the other hand, that's not what we are told on a daily basis. So when you look into the popular business press, usually you find a lot of information about wonderful new unicorns. Unicorns, those startups with a valuation over $1 billion US. So, and then they are everywhere, US, China, Europe, where are they popping up? And and if you look at what they actually do, again, you find a lot of companies which are populating the digitalization space. So in the nowadays business language, most of those startups would claim that they are disruptive. So the disruption is everywhere. So maybe we just need to be more patient, and then this will fix our productivity and unemployment and prosperity problem. So not some other figures that kind of reinforce that picture that we have a high innovation dynamic is at least that the venture capital investments are unparalleled in history. So what you see is more and more money goes into venture capital, and also the venture capitalists increased their investments again after we had this problem in the early 21st century when the dot-com bubble crashed together, and now we're really again you could say back on track, and they're investing more than ever. So we should probably expect a lot of interesting startups to come onto the market. There's some cynics, that they sort of, want to spoil our party, and they just say, there's a lot of fresh money pumped into the market, and that money needs to go somewhere. And basically, we have a lot of money desperate for some sort of meaningful investment, at least some kind of return, because we have in some areas of the world, at least, people have problems to get some returns for their investment. We see financial repressive. Okay, we have maybe policies in place that are a little bit repressive against investment and saving. So they look for new ways to invest meaningful. So the question here is venture capital funding really going into the right places? Yeah, that's also coming a nice analysis from Jeffrey Funk again, who basically looks at that unicorn lists and startups and is analyzing how much of these unicorns are really making money and how many of them are just losing money. And to make a long story short, what you see here is that a lot of them are just losing money. And so there are again people who would argue that we have seen that picture before. Remember .com bubble and the .com crash and so on. And maybe did we learn anything from that crisis? Are we going to go the same route again? We pump up a massive amount of startups who make no money, and so can this be sustainable? But they're disruptors, and maybe they will be profitably someday. That's the hope. And here is still again some numbers on net losses, just in different forms. So we have at least in 2019, which is a little bit longer ago, but anyway. So we see that almost 30% had losses bigger than 50% of their revenues. So basically, they burn more money, more than half of the money they make, they burn without having any profits. And then others lose more than 30%, and including Uber, Lyft, and other very famous names. And that's even without those companies who are already gone. So in 2020, it's a little bit better. Maybe Corona is helping some of the digital companies a little bit, but it's not really good. Plus, what you should also keep in mind that we have some large cumulative losses already. So many of these companies are around longer already, and they have cumulated losses every year. So someday they should repay what they made in losses, or they accumulated in losses all over these time. For example, Uber, I will talk a little bit about the sharing economy and Uber. They have accumulated more than 25 billion US dollar. So they have to make a lot of profit to be a profitable mainstream company someday. So one of the key arguments is, it's different because they are probably disruptive. They are they're disruptors. So you need to treat them somehow in a different way. So what is that disruption? Yeah, I guess many of you already came across the theory of Clayton Christensen, who was in the Harvard Business School and became famous because of this theory. And it became a very popular concept, but not always all people who claim to have disruptive businesses or startups really take that theory very, very serious. And so I just want to remind you what a disruption is. So I do something very unusual. I have a lot of text here on my PowerPoint presentation. So I want you to study that text together with me. And what we see is that Clayton Christensen describes this disruption phenomena as a process whereby a small number of whereby a small company with fewer resources is able to successfully challenge established incumbent businesses. So it's about companies substitution and some small companies successfully challenging established incumbent business, very often a bigger one, especially as incumbents focus on improving their products and services for the most demanding and usually most profitable customers. They exceed the needs of some segments and ignore the needs of others. So they're kind of overshooting the needs of their customers. And in this situation, entrants that prove disruptive begin by successfully targeting those overlooked segments, gaining a foothold by delivering more suitable functionality, frequently at a lower price. Incumbents chasing higher profitability in more demanding segments and not to respond vigorously, entrants then move upwards, delivering the performance that incumbents mainstream customers require while preserving the advantages that drove their early success. When the mainstream customers start adopting the entrants offering in volume, disruption has occurred. Okay, that's disruption. Okay, everyone should be reminded of disruption. So what is important in our context? This. So smaller company with fewer resources, challenges, established, incumbent, in overlooked segments with some sort of more suitable functionality at a lower price. So that's, for our purposes, that's are the main points. So in some way, Christensen has, made a theory out of the story of David and Goliath, right? So small guy beating the big guy. And there's a trick why this is working. Yeah, and there's another thing about disruptive innovation theory, which is also important in that context, because we were talking about improving the life of the bottom end of the income pyramid. And sometimes on a global scale, people talk about the bottom or the base of the pyramid nowadays. And if you connect these two theories, then you see that here in that chart, you see that we have also an underlying variable here. It's not only about performance over time, established products, disruptive products, it's also about customers and people who are consuming these disruptive innovations. And what a theory is suggesting that over time, the customer would profit from that process of disruption, because more and more it brings formerly expensive and sophisticated products to more and more people with a lower level of wealth and skill. So that's an important point. So that's the process. So that's probably a good, you could say, side effect. So now let's have a look at our disruptors and unicorns. We see in the last couple of years, and I will take the ride-sharing services as an example. Yeah, I already mentioned Uber, but there are also others, and let's have a look what they offer. Yeah, so I would suggest that maybe these ride-sharing services have some marginal advantages in comparison to traditional taxi services. Why is that only marginal? Well, problem here, we were talking about technological innovation. Where's the technological innovation here? So basically what they do is they use the same state of technology, maybe same, more or less the same cars, they have drivers, you drive on the same roads as taxi services did before. So what's their innovation? Well, they have the app and they have maybe some more sophisticated route planning in place, some benefits, marginally more convenient. But in the end of the day, can they really transport more people per time than what the other companies could do? Maybe marginally more, but not too many more. So I would argue there are no significant productivity advantages. So that would translate that not really additional value can be created on this basis. And if there's no productivity gains in significant productivity gains or additional value, then probably there can be no higher wages for the workers, for those who drive the taxis. And there's some studies also about the cost effectiveness, because there sometimes was the argument that companies that actually produce cars would be in danger because of the disruptors such as ride sharing, because nobody would buy cars anymore, because everyone would just use the service. So that was sort as being more efficient than the ownership. But it turns out that seems to be not the case. So there seems to be no significant cost advantage. So if there's no significant cost advantage, there's no sustainable savings for customer possible. So if now the regulations goes into the gig economy in order to improve the wages for the workers, that would probably just increase the losses, and they already have the losses. So they will suffer more losses. So the question is this business model sustainable? So what are they gonna do? So they must try something different. And actually, I would suggest that they sort of already do this, because they have maybe a different business strategy or model. And I would describe it in this way, that strategy seems to be to raise a lot of venture capital, plus get a lot of other capital in place to keep that machine running via IPO debt, venture debt, SPACs, or whatever. And that is basically subsidizing the growth numbers, because growth is what they need to prove that they are disruptive. Because fast growth is this indicator for large market success, potential disruption. And in the end of the day, the idea is to secure competitive position in the market by undercharging customers. That means it's clear that due to their lack of productivity gains, the only chance of gaining market share is by undercharging customers. That means they subsidize below market prices with that cheap capital they're getting. That is some sort of unfair advantage, because in that industry, historically, we have a lot of smaller incumbents, meaning the taxi companies are not, these big, large, evil incumbents that David has to beat out of the market. But it's the other way around, more or less, because they are very well, capitalized companies, startups, new companies, fighting against many small incumbents which have no deep pockets. So the strategy seems to be here just to gain market dominance and make quite regulated market with not so, I mean, they have some competition, but it's not so strong competition because you have that they're quite in many places in the world, they're regulated markets. So you need licenses for running a taxi business. But the argument goes here, we try to monopolize this fractured market, and that goes back to this narrative, winner takes all market, right? So if they manage it, they sort of take all these markets over country by country, kick out the old small incumbents, with the little guy with his taxi making the money, and replace them with larger companies, and claiming at least to have some sort of scale advantage. And then the customer probably is ready to, my hypothesis would be that they're not, do these undercharging customers forever, but then after the competition is gone, they can raise prices like all the monopolists do, and then they rip off the customer. So also, if you're a fan of Uber and like the low prices, I guarantee you that will not go on forever, because it's the only way to get the profits. So, is it a disruption? Are they disruptors? I would say no, because disruption theory was not about a cheating Goliath beating many Davids. So that's pretty much the other way around. And that's why I call this sort of disruption, I call brute force disruption. So what are my propositions? So this sort of disruption is sort of fake. It's based on unfair competition, easy money, and predatory business models. And without the productivity enhancing technology, innovation, no sustainable growth, business model, and employment opportunities can be created. So if it's rotten at the basis, you can only save yourself with some sort of a, strange business model, let's put it this way. And in the end of the day, I would suggest that the business of innovation should return to its roots and foster more sustainable, real disruptive innovation and business models. So this is not sustainable in the long run. So when we are celebrating creativity and innovation, we should be sure that we are celebrating the right thing. So what all that has to do with business schools and universities? Well, usually universities also develop technologies and do R&D. So one part of the story could be there's a lack of revolutionary technology. So the unicorns, the unicorns have a hard time, to create value in the first place, because there's no appropriate technology to really do this, get this productivity gains. So that idea will be followed tomorrow. I will have another webinar. So if you're interested in that and the role of universities in that question, you're invited to come tomorrow again. But there's another aspect, and that's maybe the lack of creative or sustainable business models. I mean, we have some revolutionary technologies. But even if we have it, there seems to be a problem. So maybe that has something to do with the type of training the people at venture capitalists and startups are receiving and practicing. So what we see is a lot of copy-paste, herd behavior, and opportunism. How can this be? Are they sort of getting the wrong education? And then on the other end, we also have on the side of the scholars, it appears at least to me, a lot of uncritical articles. For example, about Uber, also other sharing economy companies. And so what's going on with the critical thinking skills in universities? Are we really providing the right role models also for the students to critically assess new business models, the use of technology, technological innovation, entrepreneurship? Or maybe is it just a lot of hype around entrepreneurship? So we are sort of creating a Webleyan entrepreneurship culture. Now that's what some colleagues called that sort of, hype and cult. I would already say cult around entrepreneurship that seems to attract the wrong students to become entrepreneurs for the wrong reasons without being really prepared to take that demanding role over. So it looks like it's sold like all fun and games being an entrepreneur, but the truth is more it's hard work and it's difficult, and most of those who try will fail. And so here again, are the business schools especially, transporting or creating the right culture for entrepreneurship? And are they, also preparing future entrepreneurs for that in terms of work ethics? Because it's a lot of work, and do we really provide that sort of ethical framework? So what can business schools and universities do? Some propositions for that. First is that, curricula should focus on combining business model and technological aspects. So the role of technology innovation in entrepreneurship and also for business model innovation must be made very clear. So how these opportunities really are created and must be shaped should be made more clear. So the focus purely on business model innovation might be misleading. Second proposition would be fostering a creative culture, critical thinking, and also work ethics in teaching and research. So it's good to have fun and to be interested in creativity and so on, but it's not the full story. And also creativity is a lot about finding solutions for real problems. So before we come up with ideas, we should really understand the problem. And don't be, too distracted by good marketing and, a lot of hype, success stories, and so on. So keep the critical thinking alive. The third proposition would be attract and combine the right audiences or the right audience for entrepreneurship. That means, might be a better idea not only to teach about how business models and technology must be combined, but also bring that to the classroom, foster diversity of disciplines, and not, just business students talking about business model innovation to other business students. So they must be connected to the feasibility of things. And the last one is focus to learn about value creation and improvement of life through productivity and unique positioning, which is basically innovation then, and not only copying and value capturing. So because the point is here, and that's the last point for today, don't forget that we also need economic sustainability. There's a lot of talk about sustainability, but my feeling is that economic sustainability is somehow sort of being coming automatic, and I try to give some some critical aspects that it seems to me that economic sustainability is somehow forgotten more and more, and especially have that economic sustainability in mind for all the stakeholders. So, a business model that only works if you exploit your employees, or you exploit your customers, or you destroy your competition, or you rip off your investors, is not economic sustainability. It's not as economic sustainable. So should not be at the cost of any stakeholders in the long run. Yeah, that's all what I wanted to talk to you about for today. If you're interested in further reading some references, you can find them here. Other reference, it's not comprehensive, but you can find a lot of interesting readings here. And so that's all from my side. So thank you for the moment. And yeah, if you have questions, I will try to answer them, or you want to discuss some of the points, I'm ready here.
Thank you, Prof. Yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, you can raise your hand, or you can type them out if you don't want to talk live. But maybe what you can just share a bit on is, if you're thinking, so you say we need to have more of a creative culture and more critical thinking. Do you think this needs to start at university, or do you think it should businesses start developing that sort of thinking? Where do you think it should start, or should it happen simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a good point actually, because I guess it should start with day one of your life, right? So it should start at school, it should start everywhere, it should be in society, especially yeah, let's put it this way, that the honest and critical discussion of issues. And my feeling would be that also sometimes in companies, people tend to follow some, less substantiated hypes rather than thinking for themselves, which might be a very human thing to follow some sort of herd behavior. But, if you want to be creative and disruptively innovative, that will not lead to any sort of success in this area, from my perspective, at least.
Thanks for that. I see people are a bit shy with the questions today. Perhaps you had a few tips for those who want to try be more creative in their everyday lives. Is there anything that you do or that you suggest people do to try and tap into their creativity?
As I said, it always starts with problems. I'm not thinking that we don't have enough problems. So it's good if you recognize problems. The next step would be to understand the root causes of these problems. So what some call problem sophistication. So if you really go down, that might require some work formerly known as research. Yeah. Well, I'm not expecting everyone to become a researcher, but everyone is an expert for their lives. So if you are the expert for your life, you know probably your problems and the problem of your, direct environment better than everyone else. So if this is the case, then let's put it this way, that could be translated into an opportunity if you use it and train creativity to find some solutions, to have some idea to bring that to minimize these problems, and that can be a good way for starting up some entrepreneurial activities. Now that would probably one of the ideas, but that's not really where the university can help. The university can help with providing solution knowledge and providing also helpful tools and all that what I said in the last slides, right? But I'm not sure if the universities and also the business schools always really do this or fall for some sort of what some scholars called Fablian entrepreneurship.
We do have a question from Rosemary. She says, how can an organization like a university encourage this approach, which is a creative culture, when it could also be seen as having to serve the needs of the existing business world, which, as you say, is not now working like this?
Yeah, well, the university is a large organization, and not all parts of the university are responsible for fostering entrepreneurship. Of course, we also need to have people who run the existing businesses, and we cannot be disruptively innovative all day, and not everyone can do it. I mean, literally, yeah, it's a minority who would be and who is capable of becoming a successful entrepreneur with technological innovation in a degree that he can form a successful unicorn. We should not have the illusion that basically that's a mass phenomena. That's not true. Not everyone can be a millionaire. That's probably not possible. So, but for those parts, at least at business schools, I would say, who are involved in the business of creativity and innovation, they can do what I said. And the other part is, in general, also for those who are thinking and researching about finance, about marketing, about production, and yeah, also the engineers, but that's not the topic of today. Should also train and teach all students and also practice themselves that critical thinking. Don't fall victim of that hypes and cults, and think for yourself. So I hope that somehow addresses the question.
Thanks, Prof. If you have any follow-up on that, Rosemary, if you want to ask anything else, and you're welcome to raise your hand and I'll open your mic. I do have Ernest says, sorry, Stefan, that I'm late, but we fighting electricity issues. But luckily, what we will do is we will send the link out to the video and the presentation that should go out tomorrow sometime. He did ask, I hope your presentation will be made available. So just to answer your question, that will be made available. Okay, I don't see any other questions for now, but if anyone does think of any questions after the webinar, they're welcome to email them through. There'll be an option for you in the email tomorrow to have any queries or questions, and that will come through to me, and I can forward that directly to Prof. Yeah, I don't know if you'd also like to share more details on the webinar tomorrow, Prof. Perhaps you can send that through to me, and I'll also include that to those that attended.
Yeah, thank you too. And yeah, I would kind of let me check a little bit. I would just keep the excitement and high and the expectations, and will not reveal too much about tomorrow's presentation, if that is okay for you.
Okay, no, that's fine. But what I'll do is I'll share the details with everyone so they can possibly attend tomorrow.
So tomorrow I will talk more about the technology side. So that also maybe goes a little bit in the direction of creative culture at universities, and where maybe some problems are. What not. That's a question if the universities themselves can control all of these factors, but we can discuss this.
Okay, great. What time will it be tomorrow?
Sarah, I don't know this without my calendar.
Okay, no problem. What I'll do is I will find that. I think I've seen that advert with, I think there's about 4 of you. I will send that out to everyone so they can link up to that as well.
Thank you.
Wendy also just sent a message saying thank you so much. Thanks for that, Wendy. Okay, I think that's about it for. Oh, Rosemary has raised her hand, so let me allow her to talk.
Hi, Stefan, I'm just intrigued. Thank you for the presentation. Do you not think that there is an element where the university uses metrics and rewards staff or academics based on mechanisms that establish and maintain the status quo? And when you start painting outside those lines, you do so potentially at quite a high personal risk.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right.
And how do we address that? I just think it's the typical situation of and there are lots of arguments to be made in lots of areas of life, which is exactly the same problem. It's not that people don't see the problems or don't know the problems, but often trying to do something, firstly, there's the risk of failing. So, if you think you're going to succeed, then maybe you're prepared to take the risk. But, you're taking a stab in the dark and you might just stab yourself in the back. And the challenge is that because of the herd mentality, who gets to be the person who steps out there? Because maybe the price individually is so high that it's actually not worth the risk. So it's this, risk avoidance behavior is to some degree being inculcated to the benefit of the top of the pyramid.
Yeah, well, what can I say? That are all good points, and I think this is part of the problem, but we should be honest enough to actually say that, right? So when we talk about innovation and disruption, blah, 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 we also need to make sure that we make those who are interested in that area very aware that there is no free lunch. Where there's a high reward, there's a high risk. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's not for everyone. And but we should also, at the same time, we should also try to especially at the university, should try to attract more the risk takers and encourage those who are aware what they are doing and enable them to do this what they potentially want to do better. I think that this is probably the best answer I can give. Plus, what you said about the institutional aspects inside the university that probably make it hard to have that step out activities. That's the same thing, but that's actually probably the same phenomena in every organization, and that's what innovative behavior is all about. Some sort of hopefully positive deviance from that what the mainstream, the herd, is doing, and how probably this is how we are constructed as humans, that it turned out to be the safe play to be with the herd, and only from time to time you have people who get out of the herd, try something new, and those who are not burned, they are the heroes, but the others, maybe they are forgotten. But if nobody leaves the herd, then the herd will stand still at some point of time.
Do you think that what I term, and I don't know if it's officially ever seen like this, but what I see as sort of a surveillance culture is actually also part of this problem, at a very fundamental level, and it maybe wasn't all a positive thing, but at some point lecturers and teachers could almost do anything they liked in the class because nobody was there watching. So yes, you could get absolute chaos and disaster out of that, but potentially it created space where you could challenge people and you could challenge your curriculum, etc. And the one thing that I find a little disturbing, there's lots of positive, but that I find a little disturbing out of the whole pandemic and, everybody and their cousin's course goes online, is that it does seem to feed into this kind of idea of allowing surveillance, so now suddenly, in order to ensure that you're not creating chaos online, that, you may start to have a situation where a dean or a head of a department, wants to have access to your courses, be able to drop in and see what you're doing, etc. And that kind of surveillance, to me, would seem to herald the potential of now playing it even more safe, because the last thing you want to do is be called out for trying something different. Now, there are ways, as you say, if you're more of a risk taker by personality, you just have to make sure you have your arguments lined up as to, how to defend that kind of behavior. But I do think, in places where it's kind of a slash and burn and cut people off, and there's financial constraints, it does sort of lead to that playing it very, very safe. And at some point, as you say, you're going to actually land up with a university that doesn't challenge, not the university, but the individuals are not challenging anything. And then what are you? You might as well just produce 10 textbooks that can get read for the next 30 years.
Yeah, I would almost agree on everything you say, but it basically boils down to the point that also universities need to create circumstances that allow creative work and critical thinking. And if they don't, they somehow are becoming more and more useless, I would even say.
No, I would agree with you, because also the one thing which I'm not sure, how the brick and mortar universities are viewing this, or how critically they're viewing it. But the one thing that the pandemic has caused is it's made everybody online in some way. And that then establishes for a student who perhaps potentially had never, ever thought of studying online, they just viewed the traditional approach to higher education. Well, if you're studying online through, University ABC, which used to be face-to-face, Well, you can easily now study through some other one, in Europe, in the US, in China, because it's all online anyway. So I do agree with you that I don't know how much the brick and mortar universities are questioning what they bring. I think there are a number of things they can bring that you cannot achieve online or not as effectively. But I don't think they're necessarily asking that question enough.
Yeah, that's also a good point. Sure. So we have a lot of limitations due to the mode of education we are now experiencing. But again, it has also some advantages at the low end of the market, I would say, right? So for those who had no access, it's good to have some access. For those who had better access, they kind of feel like, okay, that's the beta version of what we had before.
Right. Anyway, thank you for the discussion. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you too. Thanks for
Thank
Chris.
you. Thanks, everyone. Just one last comment. Wendy just said a really good question from Rosemary. Ethics, spirituality, and professionalism help. Universities, tertiary, and ongoing learning also helps. So thanks for that. Yeah. So just to close off, thank you so much to Prof. Husich for sharing with us today. We are privileged to have you come and speak to us and provide insight into creativity. I think it's an area that's not really looked into too much in South Africa. So thanks for that. So as I mentioned, the videos and the slides will be available for everyone who attended on our website. So we'll send this out, a direct link to this tomorrow on World Creativity and Innovation Day, which takes place tomorrow. So try to do something creative. But for any other information on UEL, you can visit our website on www.ukznextendedlearning.com. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the session. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me there. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.